Hey everybody, how is it going? My name is Aaron Knoll, and welcome back to the Chokeslam debates. We are here during our big Scratch and Claw event. This is day 5. We've already had plenty of matches up, great debates, some multiple championship matches, and we are back here for another one today. This is the Chokeslam Championship. And let's just go ahead and get right in and start introducing our competitors. First off, we have the challenger. He is undefeated with a record of 3-0. Ryan Big O Regan. Ryan, how are you doing, man?
Sweaty, but with this kind of weather, it's to be expected. Lots of things are hot out right now, so happy to at least be indoors where I know things are safe and secure, and I can bitch about something on the internet like a normal big white guy can.
Absolutely. This is the place for people to bitch. And going up against him, we have Chokeslam's undefeated reigning champion, the Cosmic Night Fury. There we go. Nico Suave Regoli. Nico, how are you doing, man?
I'm also sweaty. So there's that. It was kind of humid this morning. Went for a long-ass walk. I don't know why. This particular match has had me more nervous than my previous matches. And I don't think it was because of anything Ryan did. It's more so because I had writer's block. And I am someone who really likes to write out their arguments thoroughly. And when you have writer's block, that is a bad thing to have. And I found a way to overcome it. I threw up a little bit this morning from the nerves, but I'm good now. So I'm here to fight. I worked hard to get this. I'm going to do what I can to keep it.
Sweaty and vomiting. You're really trying to upstage me.
Bringing all the illnesses today, let's talk to some more sweaty people because I am not alone. I have 3 judges here helping decide the victory, people who are in the know on wrestling and can make the correct decisions. First off, to my left, he is known as the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. JB3. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. I love wrestling. I love talking about wrestling. I love listening to people talk about wrestling. And I am just ready to listen to people debate about wrestling.
And on my left-hand side, we have our second judge, Mr. Kevin Potts. Kevin, how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm glad to be here for this championship match. Glad to be picked for this. I love hearing Ryan debate. His debate style is similar to mine, kind of off the cuff style. And Nico's, I've heard many of his debates. I know he's a very structured, planned individual, so it should be interesting to hear how this debate goes. Just ready to get into it.
All right, and then we move on to our final judge position directly between the 2 competitors so that if he makes a wrong call, they can beat him up. Mr. Ryan Payne. Ryan, how you doing?
That's of not happening, but I'm pretty good today. I've faced both of these men before in debate, so trust me, I'm the last person needed to worry about ganging up on.
All fair. That's all fair. So before we get into it, just a quick reminder of the rules. Not that any of these gentlemen shouldn't know it, but we are going to have 4 rounds of open debate with an extra round should we be in need of a tiebreaker. Each round is going to have a 90-second opening. There will be 5 minutes of open debate between the competitors, and each one will get a 60-second closing. They also each have a 1-minute extension that can be used for an opening or a closing, which can be used during one round. After the end of each round, the judges will then make their decision on who will win, which they'll write on their whiteboard and present to the screen for us to see. The person who gets the most votes wins the round. First 1 to 3 rounds wins the title. Any questions on anyone's ends?
No.
Nah.
All right, let's continue to sweat and let's pick a champion. And with that, we will go ahead and get straight into our first question. Under indie wrestling, the question is, which indie talent has the potential to become big in an established wrestling promotion? And all right, so we'll go ahead and get into this first debate, guys. Nico, you're up first. 90 seconds on your opening.
So my pick is the Black Swan of British wrestling, the current Progress Wrestling and Attack Pro Wrestling World Champion, the WXW 16 Karat Gold 2020 tournament winner, Cara Noir. Cara Noir has one of the most unique stage presences in wrestling today. Through his ballet background, he looks, walks, and moves like the best version ever produced of Swan Lake learned how to become a great professional wrestler. When he walks to the ring, everyone in attendance is on the edge of their seats, soaking in his presence because they know they're not just about to watch a match, but they're going to be told a story with a 3-act structure, a story with a conflict, a climax, and a resolution, sometimes with an unexpected and brilliant twist, but always a story told with every fiber of his heart and soul. And once the story is over, crowds have literally thrown flowers into the ring as a way to thank him for his heartfelt performance. He's wrestled phenomenal matches against the likes of Mike Bailey, Jeff Cobb, Mark Andrews, Kyle Fletcher, Chris Brooks, Pac, El Phantasmo. Pete Dunne gave him serious praise after their match at Chapter 95 in Progress, and most notably, Cara Noir and Ilya Dragunov had an amazing 4-match rivalry in Progress last year that each time found a way to tell a romantic war story as if they were star-crossed lovers bound by violence and their ability to take punishment, adding a new layer to their relationship with each fight they had. With his stage presence and 3-act structure approach to in-ring storytelling that has allowed him to put on 5-star performances, he could easily capture the hearts and minds of the viewing public and become a megastar in AEW, New Japan, Impact, any brand in WWE, any major promotion wise enough to pick him up.
And that is time. All right. Ryan, your 90 seconds begins when you start speaking.
My pick for a future big name superstar is probably a name that you've heard before. Fatu. Anyone that knows wrestling, anyone that knows the famous Samoan Iowani family knows the name of Fatu. You could go down an entire lineage, generation after generation, talking about the great members of this family, extended family even, that have gone ahead and graced wrestling. And there is a gentleman who probably many have never heard of, barely is in any kind of major promotions, let alone major indie promotions. Relatively a newcomer to the ring, even though he's been working ever since 2012. And that's Jacob Fatu, the son of Sam Fatu, who some would know as Tama or the Tonga Kid back when he performed in WWE, and whose cousins and uncles I'm sure you've probably heard of at some point. He has all the earmarks of a lineage that would guarantee him a spot in any major promotion lucky enough to grab him up. And I'll get into that later. That's my time.
All right. Good openings, guys. 5 minutes begins on the clock when you guys begin speaking.
So, Ryan, I'd like to start this off with a question directed towards you. Jacob Fatu is most known right now for his work in MLW, where he's basically the super heavyweight with a lot of athleticism, and he has a mouthpiece in Joseph Samael. WWE has the AOP with Seth Rollins, the Indian guys with Malcolm Bivens, Bobby Lashley with MVP, Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman. AEW has Wardlow with MJF, Lance Archer with Jake Roberts, and now Brian Cage with Taz. Impact has the Desi Hit Squad with their manager. Madman Fulton just walked away from Sami Callihan. NWA has the Pope speaking for the Dawsons. What exactly does Jacob Fatu have that makes him different from these other super heavyweights that also have mouthpieces? And don't say he can do flips, because Brian Cage and Jeff Cobb can do that too.
Nico, you pretty much just proved my point. The fact that he is basically a template for everything that we have been able to see in mainstream wrestling proves that he is someone that would definitely be picked up in maybe 5 to 10 years or so, especially considering he has a lineage, he has the athleticism, he has the size, he has the look, and if needing a mouthpiece, like say Umaga did, which of course was his uncle, then there is someone that would always be around to supply that. It's basically a lock that someone would want to go ahead and grab him up. If not the WWE, then certainly AEW, NWA, or anyone else that knows how to work with a performer like that, as opposed to Cara Noir, who easily is just more showmanship and flamboyance than he is anything structurally sound in the ring. He's the kind of person that someone would go ahead and buy up and then waste whatever gimmick he had and whatever talent he had, just like we've seen with other high flyers in the cruiserweight division in WWE, just like we've seen with Ricochet, just like we've seen many times over. He's good, but he's also good enough to be tampered with. With Jacob,
this
Fatu,
is where I hold on.
Tamper with it.
Hold on a minute. Hold on. You said Jacob Fatu has been wrestling since 2012, and even with that lineage, how you said he's guaranteed to get picked up. If he's been in the business for about 8 years now, and he has that family lineage, then how come all he's been picked up into is MLW? Why has he not gotten up to the other bigger promotions? And I have the answer for you. It's because they already have that template. They already have like at least 3 guys of that template.
Like Darby Allin isn't like him. Like Zack Sabre Jr. isn't like him. There are plenty of people like Kara. The only difference is he's gone ahead with a ballerina gimmick, which might as well be back there with Isaac Yankem and Duke the Dumpster Drosy in regards of the job characters that they used to have back in the day. All right, there's nothing special about a guy that goes ahead and dances around like the ballerina.
But he doesn't dance around. You just think that because I mentioned his ballet background. No.
I know. Instead, he's actually in the ring and he performs more like an MMA fighter at best with his martial arts background, which we've seen plenty of that before. What, he's just going to be a skinny Brock Lesnar? We already got that with Matt Riddle. All right? There's nothing special about your guy with the exception of the gimmick, and the gimmick is going to get wasted. Whereas we know if the dude is Samoan,
that's why I mentioned every promotion because we're one.
He is going to get picked up.
No. Cara Noir is more likely to get picked up. One, because Progress has ties to NXT, and Triple H is always paying attention to the UK scene, and he will always make sure that guys who are somewhat tied to NXT will get treated to the best possibility they can. And let's say something doesn't go,
and then completely change his gimmick around so it's something a little more palatable for the audiences, and then he's going to get forgotten about.
No, he's not. Like Triple H lets you keep your gimmick if he feels that it works. And Cara Noir has gotten over.
It's still supplemental.
Cara Noir has gotten over gangbusters with the gimmick that he currently has, and he has all the star power in the world. He has so much
1 minute warning,
to
guys.
become something. Like he can put on a 5-star clinic with really anyone in WWE, anyone in AEW, anyone in Japan, anyone in Impact, and with Triple H and Shawn Michaels helming him in NXT, or with Tony Khan and the Elite helming him in AEW, he could easily turn the 5-star classics that he's putting on right now into 6-star and 7-star classics. And with his gimmick,
if he's gone ahead and done all these special accolades in all these other branches all across the world, especially in Europe, whereas Jacob has primarily been stuck in California, why hasn't Cara Noir already been picked up when he's already been doing it for 2 years longer and already has so many more accolades?
He hasn't been doing it for 2 years longer. He's been doing it since 2017.
Someone that can actually bring in some money. All right, Fatu is a name that people recognize. That is a moneymaker.
Cara Noir's been wrestling since 2017, not 2 years before.
I would dare dispute that. I've seen records of his wrestling.
And that is time on the open debate round. Each of you is going to get 1 minute to close, though, and we'll go ahead and go to Ryan first for that. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Lineage aside, we're talking about a guy who is 6'2", 285, is already the championship in his particular brand of Major League, yes. Already has his own heel faction of the Contra unit. He helmed the company's first pay-per-view event. All right, this is a guy who is a star in the making. And size-wise, attitude-wise, athleticism-wise, he has all the earmarks of what you need for a big, burly guy who can put on a show. And that's essentially what you need in a wrestling brand. And yes, the Fatu name not only helps with, promoting him, but it also means that his athleticism is quantified by generations of performers, of true athletes. There is something to Jacob Fatu that goes beyond even his name, but the name will get him in the door no matter where he goes. And that's my time.
All right, Nico, your 1 minute closing when you start speaking.
People love it when they can watch a match that blends high spots with storytelling. Cara Noir is capable of that. Fatu can do the high spots, but he doesn't have the storytelling aspect down yet. And that's proven by his MLW championship defense against LA Park. They had to go hardcore rules to make up for the fact that LA Park can't move as well as he used to, but the execution by both competitors was sloppy and the story suffered from it. Fatu is limited in what he can do, whereas Cara Noir can do it all. He can do a slow build, he can do a fast-paced back and forth, he can go hardcore if necessary. Cara Noir's match against Chris Brooks at Chapter 102 in progress, he did a spot where he went barefoot into a bunch of thumbtacks. He's capable of doing whatever you ask him to. He can put on 5-star clinics, and with the proper direction, he can put on 6-star and 7-star clinics. And the way Cara Noir looks, the way he wrestles, he has the potential to become a megastar in a similar yet unique way that personalities like Sting, Jeff Hardy, Rey Mysterio, Darby Allin have in the past. Imagine a crowd of kids and adults dressed and face painted to emulate his Black Swan persona. Imagine a sea of flowers being thrown his direction before and after. Dang it.
All right. A good first round from both competitors. We're going to go ahead and give the judges just a minute to make their final decision. Let me know once you guys are ready. All right, JV3 is ready. Ryan's good. And Kevin, you're good as well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go to JB3 first. Who is your choice for who won this round? And just remember, guys, try and keep the explanation to around 30 seconds if possible.
So the opponent that I chose gave a really, really strong explanation for why his wrestler was going to be a big success, and he hit the nail in the coffin with one of his reasons why the other one wouldn't, and that was Nico. Nico, he talked about how they have a Jacob Fatu in every single promotion, and he also talked about his guy and how he's battle tested. He's a great performer, and he's only been doing it since 2017, and he just won me over more with just so many facts that he put to the table. So I gave my point to Nico.
All right, and we'll go ahead and go to Kevin next.
While Nico painted a really good picture with Cara Noir, with his unique stage presence, I actually went the other direction. I think Ryan made some really good points as far as Jacob Fatu. He countered the argument saying that in 5 or more years, Jacob Fatu could be the next level of the super heavyweights for any promotion. And he would he's a 6'2", 285. He's ahead of a heel faction. He helmed a pay-per-view already. His name, the Fatu name, is super famous in wrestling. So my point is going to go to Ryan.
All right, so it's 1-1. So we go to Mr. Ryan Payne to make the final call. Who gets our first point?
Okay, I'm not going to beat around the bush, and the person who gets the point in this round is Nico. And while Ryan had great counter arguments when Nico was listing off accolades of why Ryan's guy Fatu didn't work, but at the same time, while Ryan was hitting a lot, he wasn't trying to compensate why Fatu would have been a better pick. Because Nico gave a lot of examples of different wrestling companies. He also talked about wrestlers who actually worked with him in the past and have said good things about his guy as well, and also the fact that he is very versatile in the ring. While if Ryan had given some more examples, or at least some more arguments towards Fatu's ability in the ring, this would have been very, very close.
All right, and so with that, Nico will take the first point and go up 1-0 in this battle, but it is far from over, and we're going to go ahead and move on to our second question, dealing with superstars of wrestling, and the question is, which current babyface in ROH could turn heel? And we're going to go ahead and start with Ryan on this one. You have 90 seconds to make your opening.
Here's the funny thing about a babyface turning heel. It's probably definitely more impactful that way than, say, the other way around when a heel becomes babyface. Why is that? Because when a babyface turns heel, there are so many factors that could really bring about something that dramatic. We grow up with a character and we see them really mature. We see them bleed and sweat for the industry that they're in. And then for them to go ahead and go a complete 180 on what they believe and what they do and who they fight for, it is drastic. It is jarring. It's the storytelling that, lots of people want to go ahead and focus on. That's why my pick is Overkill Mark Haskins. He's come into Ring of Honor pretty much after a long storied career in the Indies. And right now, up until the time of the quarantine, he was pegged to be going after Rush for the Ring of Honor Championship. It's that thing right there that could easily draw a man over the edge. And that could make a good man like Mark Haskins go to the dark side. And that is my time.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move over to Nico. Your 90 seconds begins once you speak.
So even while as a babyface, Joe Hendry has a lot of heel tendencies. His entire gimmick is writing and performing parodies of famous songs to mock his opponents before every match. In WCPW, he kept shortchanging Joseph Connors in their tag team entrance until Connors finally turned on him. In Impact, he caused Grado's girlfriend to dump him and then broke her heart by siding with Grado. And in Ring of Honor, he's had a bit of a dysfunctional partnership with Dalton Castle. In the promotions where more people have been able to watch him, he hasn't had the best results in the babyface role, simply because he's shown that his ego is too big to work with others in an equal partnership capacity. In WCPW, where everyone could watch him free on YouTube, Joe Hendry found his greatest successes as a heel, leading his own faction of the Prestige, winning the WCPW championship by repeatedly targeting Martin Kirby's head until the ref felt the need to stop the match. When Joe Hendry embraces his inner dirtbag rather than tries to suppress it, he gets results. So enough of him balancing on the babyface tightrope. He can still do everything he's doing right now, but let's turn him heel and watch the gold start to pile up around his waist. That is my time.
All right. Both competitors going shorter and sweeter with this. You guys will have 5 minutes of open debate when the first person begins speaking.
First thing I want to point out is that technically both Hendry and Haskins have played heel characters in the past. Regardless of the franchise and regardless of the promotion, we're still talking about Ring of Honor right here, right now. So tendencies aside, both of them could go heel anytime because they've been heel anytime. But as far as Dalton and Henry, they have been actually on a little bit of a pop streak. Their fight just back in February against the Righteous, they were definitely looked at as the faces in that match. And I think that their collaboration, one being more flamboyant, one being more maybe anti-hero, antagonistic, and arrogant, but it works together if you're going to go ahead and put them up against more ruthless championship caliber performers like the Righteous, like Lethal, like even the Villain
But
Corporate.
even as
that you don't need them to go heel as a heel tag team or even split up now right now. Putting them together is perfect.
Are you going to let me talk? Even as a face,
like we've done that before.
Even as a face, Hendry still has heel tendencies, and so it just feels right to go for it. Just go full heel with it. Whereas Haskins,
but if they're funny and they're entertaining, then they're anti-hero.
Whereas with Haskins, he's already in the title picture. He's already in the title picture against a heel champion in Rush, because Rush is heel since having beaten PCO to get the title back. So, and Haskins is one of those guys
going to go heel in order to get the belt, but certainly the chase for the belt is the kind of thing that can corrupt a man. We've seen it in other versions,
but it hasn't corrupted him yet. It hasn't corrupted him yet.
Immortal went heel for the belt. Austin, what is it? Austin sells his soul for Vince to win at
Mark Haskins is much better suited for the babyface role than the heel role because people love to watch him be an underdog who overcomes the odds and obstacles, much like we did against Bully.
As a babyface and got recruited for Lifeblood. Now that there is no more Lifeblood, there's no reason for him to necessarily stay face. He is egotistical to the point where he wants that belt. He's even gone on record in reports.
He gets more face pops than Hendry does. He gets more face pops than.
That's when they go vicious.
He gets more face pops than Hendry does without even trying because people just see the underdog in themselves within him.
He does turn because he will probably have to do whatever it takes to finally get that belt because he has not had a championship whatsoever in Ring of Honor. He will probably go back to his heelish roots in order to accomplish the goal he has set out to get.
I watched Mark Haskins in February as part of a Rev Pro event. He was heel there. Guess what? The crowd cheered him like he was the hero of the show because they love watching him because they still see him as the underdog who keeps overcoming odds, who goes up against Walter and Jimmy Havoc in Progress and comes so close but just can't get there, who actually overcame the odds against Bully Ray at Final Battle in December. Mark Haskins just feels more appropriate as a face, whereas with Hendry, first off, he has an amateur wrestling style that's better suited to fit the heel role because he can slow down the pace and make things technical while adding insults the same way Kevin Owens kind of did when he was a heel in his first years in WWE. And he doesn't really have, and Joe Hendry doesn't have to change anything he's doing right now to be a heel. He just has to turn up the volume on it. It's already there. The puzzle pieces are already there for you to fill out the picture.
But that was back when he was in other brands doing it. There is no reason to see that he would go heel. If anything, Dalton would probably go heel before Hendry would. Right now, Hendry's just mucking up on YouTube, having donut competitions with other people. He is putting himself out there in the zeitgeist to be more of a friendly, a sociable kind of person. There is no reason for him to go heel at this point. There is a reason for Haskins to go heel to get what he wants.
What is that reason, though?
The
one thing he's been after ever since he got into Ring of Honor is that he wanted gold. And it's the one thing that has possibly eluded him, regardless of all the great matches he has had.
But here's the thing. Ring of Honor needs a face champion. They need someone who will get the crowds back in the auditoriums, who everyone will want to cheer for. They already had Matt... They had Matt Taven as the heel champ for a long ass time. Didn't work. They had PCO as champion for a month. He got the pops, but he wasn't that good from an in-ring worker.
All right, that's a great faction. That's a great group for him to be a part of. And if you know what, if the constant battering that he gets from La Faction goes ahead and corrupts Haskins in some way to the point where even Tracy is starting to question,
it's not going to corrupt him. It's only going to make him stronger.
Then that's perfect.
It's not going to corrupt him. It's going to make him stronger, and it's going to get the fans more on his side because they're like, we want to see you overcome this. We want to see you overcome all the insurmountable odds.
And then he has to go ahead and cross the line.
That is going to be time on the 5-minute debate. All right, you guys will get 1 minute to close this out. Nico, you are going to be going first. Time starts when you speak.
I just want to reiterate that Joe Hendry, even as a face, can still be an asshole. He may not even realize it, but he can still be an asshole. And like his gimmick as it is, singing parody songs to mock his opponents, that's already enough to turn him heel. Excuse me. Whereas with Mark Haskins, he is the ultimate underdog. He is the guy who fans will cheer for more and more and more. They had an opportunity in NXT to turn Sami Zayn heel when it looked like he wasn't going to get the title. And you know what he did? He kept the good, he played it fair, and he actually won the title. Imagine if Mark Haskins did something similar. The entire Ring of Honor crowd would pop to high heaven. They would absolutely love it if Mark Haskins, the underdog that they see within themselves, overcame the insurmountable odds and finally took the championship, especially considering Ring of Honor has not had that kind of champion in quite a long time. And we got to think about
that is time.
Yes.
All right. And Ryan, you're up.
The phrase goes like this: absolute power corrupts absolutely. We have seen it in interviews. We have seen it in the matches he's done, whether it was him, PCO, and Roosh going after the belt, whether it was him, Bully Ray. Haskins will go to any depth to achieve his goal. And now, with no lifeblood to go ahead and have something for him to fight for, he is fighting for himself. He is fighting for his goal, his want, his need. He has specifically said need. And when you say need, that puts you in a whole different mindset from what a normal face would have. Hendry is charismatic. He may be snarky, he may do songs, but you know what? So did The Rock. So does Elias Sampson. You know, that's the kind of stuff that an anti-hero does. You know, they can be witty, they can be fun, they can be someone that you can get behind, even if you don't necessarily like all they do. But Haskins, being who he is, and going ahead over to the dark side to obtain what he wants, either during the match, after the match, to keep the belt.
And that is time. All right, so at the end of our second round, we will give our judges a minute now to make their decision. Guys, let me know once you have made that decision. So I have a question for our two competitors while we're waiting. Which one of you is more likely to turn heel before this match is over?
I'm keeping my composure.
Me, I see myself as like a Joe Hendry. I'm snarky, but I'm lovable. I mean, come on.
Don't factor that into your arguments.
Hey, they're already choosing.
Subliminal messaging.
I'm here to win. Like that. That's what I came here to do.
JB3 is ready. Kevin is ready.
I think we go to Kevin first this time.
Yes, yeah.
Are we ready?
I was just going to give it one more second just to let Ryan get closer.
Yeah, you're good. Just let me know when.
All right, he is ready. So, Kevin, you are up first. Without the extra subliminal messaging put out there at the end, who is your choice to win?
Yeah, I wasn't even paying attention to that.
Thanks, man. That makes me feel good.
No, you're good. This was a tight one. It came down to the closings for me. I feel like they both made really good arguments throughout the opening and the 5-minute freeform. But Ryan made a good point in that this quarantine could be a good springboard for Haskins to go heel. But also in the closing, he said about the absolute power corrupting absolutely, talking about, Austin selling his soul to Vince, bringing up the other points. But yeah, saying his need for the title, rebutting against, anti-heroes can sing songs and do stuff like that. I think he just made a better argument for Haskins to turn from babyface to heel. So again, I went with Ryan.
All right, that is the first vote for Ryan. We now move on to, as it says there, the Painmaker. Where is your vote going towards?
Well, I just need a quick clarification. What was Nico's choice again?
Joe Hendry.
Okay, yeah, that's what I remember. That's what I thought. I kept hearing Joe Henry. Okay, but besides the name mix-up, yeah, for me, this had to come down to the closing arguments as well, having to recollect what they said in their opening arguments. And while Ryan was heavily favored, my point is going to Nico because he kept bringing up with Hendry that there's already been, like, when it comes with he said that Haskins is better as a face. And his argument said he came across a show where Haskins was a heel, but people still cheered for him. Like, they didn't even care about his character. And then also the fact with Joe Hendry, the fact that face or heel, he can work either way with his persona. And as he mentioned, that when Hendry does become a heel, he gets the job done more than he would have as a face. So ultimately, I'm going with Nico.
All right, so that moves us on to Mr. JB3 with the deciding vote here. Who are you going to give it
to? First off, I agree with both of those guys. It was neck and neck. It was tight, and it also went down to the closing for me as well. What won me over was a little bit of a different bit of the closing. For Nico, he was talking about a lot of how Haskins wouldn't be a good heel and versus being a super baby face. And when Ryan went on his last one, I couldn't, it wasn't connecting with me personally for what he was saying earlier. Nico was tying a lot of the things again in this closing that he was talking about in his opening. It really pulled a full circle for me, so I gave my point to Nico.
All right, so Nico will pull the second point, going up 2-0. But again, this match is still far from over. We still have, if needed, 3 questions to go. And with that, we will move on to question number 3, which deals with one of the probably easily the biggest things in the wrestling community, which is the wrestling feuds. And this one specifically, what was the best wrestling feud of the 90s? And there was the distinction that these gentlemen could choose from any promotion of their choice as long as it took place within the 90s. So with that, we're going to go ahead and go to Nico for the 1.5-minute openings. Time begins when you start speaking.
So wrestling is unique in that it's something that has something for everyone to appreciate, both inside and outside of the ring. But the art and the business of wrestling have to evolve with the times in order to keep everyone watching those various somethings that they appreciate. As the era of the white meat babyface had lost its popularity, Stone Cold Steve Austin jump-started the Attitude Era and cemented himself from 1997 to 1999 as the blue-collar anti-hero who refused to conform to the ideals of the ultimate establishment villain, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. This is a rivalry that sparked people's love and lust for the Attitude Era, with most of their favorite 90s wrestling moments coming from this feud, and they were able to make this feud last for 2 years despite Austin and McMahon only actually having sanctioned matches with one another a handful of times. They not only used this rivalry to make Austin the face of WWF and of 90s wrestling, but also to give literally everyone else in the locker room a push, turning the story into Austin versus the world as Vince kept throwing every thug, stooge, and supernatural monster at Austin until he finally reached Vince in the 1999 Rumble, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre cage match, which introduced Paul White, and even a ladder match for control of WWF later on in the year. The 90s were about a changing of attitude, and Austin versus McMahon gave every rebellious watcher of wrestling from that decade a hero to embrace and see themselves through, and a cause to rebel against. That is my time.
All right, Ryan, your opening statement.
When I think about wrestling feuds of the 90s, I don't think about something that simply happened like a couple of years towards the tail end of the decade. I would prefer to think about something that, pretty much cemented wrestling in the 90s. That was pretty much the epitome of wrestling in the 90s. And there isn't a single rivalry that has stretched the entirety of the decade more so than Bret the Hitman Hart versus Shawn Michaels. All right. Montreal Screwjob aside, they have been in contention with each other ever since 1990, back when the Rockers were facing off against the Heart Foundation. Yeah. Basically, what you have here is a complete clashing of styles in the new generation. You have the stoic, serious, technical wrestling of Bret Hart and the flamboyant, over-the-top, high-flying skills of Shawn Michaels. These two modes, both in personality and in physical structures in the ring, perfectly talk about what it was to be a wrestler back then. And there was certainly no love lost between these two men. You could say some of it was kayfabe, but you can also say more of it was true to life. So if you go ahead and you pull back the veil, you can see that this rivalry, not just for WWE, not just for the Attitude Era, not just for the Monday Night Wars, this was a feud that cemented what wrestling
And
was.
that is time. All right. 5 minutes of open debate, gentlemen. Time will start when one of you speaks.
So the 90s were a period of change for wrestling. Austin versus McMahon represented that change in a lot of different ways, Attitude just being one of them, whereas Shawn and Brett represented an unwillingness to change, mostly from Brett. That's why he left the company to go to WCW, because he didn't want to change who he was. He didn't like the changes the company was going in the direction of. And that's partly why the viewership and sales were dropping during the era of Brett versus Shawn. Whereas with Austin versus McMahon, eyes got back onto the product and wrestling as a whole because they were adapting to the times. They were adapting to the changing attitudes of the audience.
They were adapting to WCW. That's the only reason they did it. They did it as a gimmick in order to try to push out something else that was going ahead in their time slot. And it really didn't have anything to do with what they were wanting to do with the industry. They were just trying to keep up with the competition. Brett and Shawn was the industry. Whether you look at the matches that they had, the first ever ladder match.
The industry was dying when they were in charge of it.
Whether you look at the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12, and you look at the constant back and forth, both had a face turn, both had a heel turn. Both of them were able to go ahead and combine other people into their rivalry, whether it be Owen or whether it be Diesel. They were the rivalry of that decade. And to say otherwise is to almost go ahead and put a blind eye and just say, oh, they're just a Montreal screw job and nothing else, which is short-sighted. And mind you want to talk about Austin and McMahon, there wouldn't be a Mr. McMahon if it wasn't for the Montreal screw job. There wouldn't be for that unless there was the inner conflicts between WCW, Bret Hart.
The problems of your feud just made my feud better. The problems within your feud just made my feud that much better. And it's because of Austin versus McMahon that we got so many moments that people remember from the Attitude Era that we
you got moments that were outside the
radio
ring with a bedpan to Vince McMahon's head. That's not a wrestling feud. That's a gimmick storyline.
As I stated,
that has nothing to do with wrestling. That's all
wrestling
just showmanship and pomp and circumstance.
Wrestling can be anything you want it to be. Wrestling can be anything you want it to be. It's got something for literally everybody. That's why Lucha Libre exists. That's why British Strong Style exists. That's why hardcore wrestling exists, because there's something that everyone can appreciate, including the comedy segments that take place outside of the ring. And also outside of the ring stuff is how you build feuds. They were able to build.
Okay, but that's not a wrestling Austin and McMahon
for 2 years.
Other than an angry worker and his arrogant boss. That's not wrestling. That's just society, period. But as far as wrestling, I'm talking like hardcore.
Wrestling is life.
It has
wrestling
no
is life, and life is wrestling. The best wrestling is the stuff that adapts from life and makes it relatable, so that you have someone to root for when the hero finally overcomes the odds. People saw themselves in Stone Cold Steve Austin.
You had the conflict with their social lives, whether it was Sonny being brought in, whether it was Owen coming over and helping Shawn out to fight his older brother. There was enough outside and inside, but they kept it in the ring, and it showed in the matches themselves. Name me one good match that Vince and Austin ever really had. A match, an actual match. Name one.
St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
Can you actually think about it move to move, face to face? Or are you maybe thinking
it started
like ladder matches, like Iron Man matches, like the sharpshooter, like the show-stopping goddamn sweet chin music when it hits?
Just ask me a question and you're not going to let me answer it.
Memorable.
You just asked me a question and you're not going to let me answer it. You're asking me, do I remember the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? I remember Austin beat the living shit out of Vince McMahon for several minutes, banged his head against every little thing there was in around them. They climbed up the cage, hits Vince off the cage. His back violently hits spine first, the edge of the announce table, and then he literally throws him off the gurney, throws him back into the cage, beats him up some more. Vince takes a head bump on the cage wall and gets busted open badly, and then out comes Paul.
So what you're describing isn't so much a wrestling match as it is just one guy beating up another guy.
That's what a wrestling match can be. That's why squash matches exist.
Yes, but at least when squash matches, they're actually doing squash moves. This was just angry violence. It was probably the worst part of the Attitude
You're trying to limit what wrestling. You're trying to limit what wrestling can actually be, and that's problematic in itself. But the fact of the matter is, wrestling can be whatever you want it to be. Lucha Underground made it into a Mexican soap opera.
Someone else's version of wrestling. That's all that was. But enough of
imitation is considered flattery. That was. Imitation can be considered flattery, and so like if you're copying something that someone else was doing, and that's something
and that is
good,
time on the 5 minutes. All right, this was definitely a heated debate. You guys will each get 1 more minute to close out your arguments. Ryan, we're going to go ahead and go to you first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Definitions of wrestling feuds, definitions of rivalries being what they are. A wrestling feud is something that takes place in the ring, classically, outside of the ring, classically, in the eyes on television, in the seats, in the back. It is a feud that goes all over the landscape of the industry. Even when Brett went to WCW, there was still animosity. There was no resolution until practically back in 2010 when they just shook hands and that was it. But there was never a proper send-off. There was never any proper love. At least Austin actually sold his soul to McMahon at WrestleMania X7 in order to go ahead and squash whatever rivalry that was because he wanted the belt more. So that 2 or 3 years that they went ahead and fought, that really made a difference in case, Austin wanted the belt. So that was more important. But at least Shawn and Brett stuck to their convictions, stuck to who they were, and made it play out perfectly for all eyes to see and for many eyes to not even know about until after the fact. That is a wrestling feud.
And that is time. All right. Nico, you are going to be up next. 1 minute when you begin speaking.
Okay, first off, WrestleMania X7 should be stricken from the record because that happened in the aughts, not the 90s. Secondly, Orion is talking about classic definitions of what wrestling is, but again, I reiterate that the 90s were a period of change for wrestling, a period that defied what we used to think wrestling could be, and Austin versus McMahon was a rivalry that changed the definition of what it could be. Like, it's no longer just something that happens in the ring. They built it up outside of the ring for 2 years, and Vince just put literally everyone else in the company against Austin, trying to keep him down until he finally got to the final boss level. And by the way, Ryan is saying, do you remember anything that happened in his matches? He didn't mention anything. I'll mention some stuff that happened in my feud. The hilarious limp stunner that Stone Cold gave Vince in Madison Square Garden, Mike Tyson's involvement at the post-Mania press conference where he told Vince, fuck conformity, the beer Zamboni, the beer truck, McMahon 316 says,
and that is time.
Pants.
All right. After another heated debate, the judges are going to have just a couple of minutes to make their decision on who wins this round. I think it should go without stating thus far, no matter what the decision is, you guys are both clearly passionate wrestling fans and are both bringing extremely well put together arguments. So I commend both of you on that.
I feel exhausted.
And we see JB3 is ready to go. Kevin is also ready. And Ryan is ready to go. So, Ryan, we're actually going to go ahead and go to you first on this one. Who is your winner?
It was a little one-sided at first during the arguments, but then the closing brought it back to a dead even. So I'm going to say Ryan actually gets the point on this one because while Nico did have some good moments he brought into his closing, but it was mainly throughout the debating round where Ryan kept attacking the point of Austin and Vince's feud. It wasn't much more of like a wrestling feud. But when he brought up with Michaels and Brett, was the fact that these were just two men who clearly had issues with each other that was inside the ring. And also in his closing statement, as he mentioned, once Brett left WCW, those feelings didn't boil over. And when he did come back, as he referenced 2010, that was still considered like a very uneasy moment between those two men. So Ryan gets the point.
All right. We're going to go ahead and move on to JB3. Where does your decision go on this one?
And oh man, but this one was a really, 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 really close one for me too. especially before the closing. The guy that I picked in his closing, he really closed in on a lot of the facts that he brought to the table. And that's Ryan, Big O, especially like Payne said, with the wrestling aspect of it. But he talked a lot about the real heat. He talked about it, also was long lasting, and then he brought up the fact that Austin and McMahon just had bad matches. And I know that Nico brought up the cage match and how good it was as a whole. The legend, when he brought up the legendary and how it cemented wrestling and stuff for Hart and Michaels, I had to go and give Ryan the point on this one. Big O.
All right. So with that, Ryan does have 2 votes, which means he will get the point for this round. But we'll go ahead and let Kevin give a quick explanation on who he picked.
Yeah, I actually went the opposite direction. I went with Nico just because Austin was the face of he was made the face of WWF in the Attitude Era. He was the rebel, and he was basically the voice of the fans. And Sean and Brett was awesome. Don't get me wrong, but Vince threw everything at Austin, and I didn't feel like there needed to be a bunch of matches between the two of them. So Nico made a lot of good points on that.
All right, and so with that, Ryan does receive the point, so the score becomes 2-1. This game is far from over as we go ahead and move into question number 4. And this one is focused on the ECW, specifically what was the most brutal match in ECW history prior to the WWE's takeover. And I would just like, before we get started with Ryan's opening, I would just like to give a friendly reminder for this question and the possible 5th one. You guys both still have your minute extensions on your opening or your closings available, should you like to use them at any point.
You're right. I forgot about that.
With that being said, 1.5 minutes on the clock. Ryan, your opening starts when you begin speaking.
So what exactly does it mean to be brutal in ECW? That's a bit of a high bar, if you ask me, because ECW pretty much cemented itself on the basis that it was hardcore, that it was extreme, that it wasn't your daddy's wrestling, that you were going to go ahead and see things, see matches, see performers that you wouldn't find anywhere else because the other places were probably too scared to have them. So for something in ECW to be brutal, it's got to be almost nauseating, stomach churning, and yet fantastic at the same time. And it's very hard to balance the two. But there definitely is one match in ECW that many people would say is at the top of the list. And that would be Sabu versus Terry Funk, champion Terry Funk, in a barbed wire match at Born to be Wired 1997. This was just buckets of blood. Buckets. And I say this as an ECW fan because it's the kind of thing where it's like you look back and you see the visceral nature of it all. And as a youngster, you're probably thriving on it. As an older person, you're like, oh, God, I watched that. That's what it means to be brutal. When you can look back at it and be like, how was I ever finding this entertaining when 2 people practically died? That's my time.
All right, certainly an interesting opening pitch there. Nico, we move over to you. Your 1.5 minutes starts when you begin speaking.
I think I'm going to use my 1 minute extension here.
All right, so that will go up to 2.5 minutes when you begin speaking.
The phrase most brutal can be interpreted as a qualitative phrase as well as a quantitative phrase. Most brutal as in the lengths they were willing to go to destroy each other, and most brutal as in how constant and continuously they destroyed each other in the time they shared the ring. I interpreted this more from the perspective of quantity, but my match's brutality levels are high quality as well. At Hardcore Heaven 1995, Axel Rotten and Ian Rotten had a Taipei death match in which they taped several shards of glass to their fists and carved each other up like Christmas hams. After a brief brawl outside the ring between Public Enemy and the gangsters that had to be stopped by police, Axel and Ian engaged in a violent 7-minute and 10-second sprint of a match, throwing constant barrages of literally sharp punches and backfists at each other's foreheads, crowns, triceps, chests, stomachs, and balls, turning each other into human pincushions. They would take shards of glass from their fists and use them against one another as knives and scalpels, slicing each other's flesh open like black market surgeons. They tied each other up in the guardrails using key lock submissions just to sadistically slice each other up more. Ian hit Axel with 2 glass-coated low blows. Every time one of their hands got close to the other brother's eyes, neck, stomach, or testicles for something as simple as a DDT or a pinfall, I got scared that somebody was going to be blinded, dismembered, disemboweled, castrated, have their throat slit, or have their arteries severed. Because the margin for error with glass is incredibly high, and it can cut you at literally any size, shape, and sharpness. At the end of the match, after both brothers were bleeding so much that it looked like they had just lost a fight with Freddy Krueger, they finished off the most accurately landed thumbtack spot I've ever seen, and a splash for good measure. Axel gets the victory. Ian's back. He didn't miss a single tack on the ring canvas. They probably spent at least an hour after the match having small shards of glass and thumbtacks being removed from the majority of their bodies and stitching up or stapling their lacerations. These two brothers tried and succeeded at literally ripping each other apart using little sharp objects at breakneck speed, all for the enjoyment of a Philly crowd. And that's why it's the most brutal match in ECW history.
All right, putting his extension to good, very descriptive use. With that being said, we're going to get into the 5 minutes of open debate. When the first person speaks, your clock will start.
So you said buckets of blood described your match. Meanwhile, my match looked like a horror film gone wrong with the amount of blood that was pouring out of Axel and Ian's bodies.
Yeah, luckily they both had white shirts on in order to emphasize that, but that's besides the point of the aesthetic. Yours was simply a gimmick. All right, the glass on the hands.
What was yours? You had barbed wire ring ropes.
All right, the amount of ideas that they actually used the glass hands in order to puncture itself. And mind you, the way the shards were, it's not like they were just poked out like a big old pointed gauntlet from medieval times. All right, the glass is done in such a way that while they're well cut, it's not going to kill. And besides, these are two guys who have probably gone ahead and done that.
Have you ever broken a glass and stepped down a shard before?
As a matter of fact, I know they've done it at least one other time because they had the same damn match later on that year.
So good they had another one. So good they had another one. So brutal they had another one because they felt they had to top it somehow.
You said, the match didn't even get underway because Alfonso stopped it because he saw blood, and that's when the other two tag teams
and then he left the building, and then they restarted it.
It was a shit show for the first 4 minutes.
As soon as he left the building, the match restarted, and it got the action going.
Meanwhile, for how long? 7 minutes, I believe you said? Whereas mine went on for over 20 minutes of two men just scraping themselves across barbed wire and chair shots opening up their bodies.
About that, the barbed wire match's brutality is undercut multiple times within the match by the wrestlers involved and by the stipulation itself. They spend the first 3 minutes of the match trying to avoid the barbed wire, but then several minutes later, Terry Funk has to roll directly into the barbed wire so Sabu can break his face with it, suggesting the barbed wire doesn't hurt as much. The very first time Sabu's body makes contact with the barbed wire, he doesn't sell the spot. He instead fixes the sash on his pants, suggesting it doesn't actually hurt that much. The sight of Sabu getting dropped balls first into the barbed wire is undercut by the fact that you don't see any bleeding from his lower body when his tights get ripped off.
Tights on. That's why you don't see it. And especially if you got something that's like got a little give to it, then yeah, just as much as a fist has a little bit of give, and that's why you're not punching all the way through, even though there's glass on it. Both matches are going to go ahead and have their air of human error. They're going to be able to be cushioned.
Your match had a lot of human error.
However, you've got faces being raked on the barbed wire. You've got Terry's face being broken open by chair shots, multiple chair shots at 53 years old. You've got Sabu duct taping his arm after it got lacerated, and he needed duct tape. Who the fuck wrestles with duct tape in order to stop the bleeding? Not to mention, if you want to talk outside interference,
and he didn't sell the wound when he was wrapping up with the duct tape.
Actually worked in the match. When Rob Van Dam and Tommy Dreamer came in and they set up Terry Funk for Sabu to go ahead, wrap himself up in the barbed wire, and do the leg drop on Terry, that was murder in the highest degree. You guys, it was
silly. It didn't look brutal.
They were just going ahead and palling around.
Sabu wrapping his legs in barbed wire for that leg drop did not look brutal. It looked silly because, like, the barbed wire is supposed to hurt. Why are you putting it on yourself? And he just goes.
You can make the same argument. Glass is supposed to hurt. Why are you putting it on yourself?
By the way,
you do it in order to gain the advantage. You do it in order to make sure the other person feels it. And I'm sorry,
RVD
a little bit on the fist as opposed to barbed wire wrapped around an entire body is going to be minimal in comparison to everything around you possibly affecting you, as opposed to just a fist.
By the way, you had RVD and the self-proclaimed innovator of violence, Tommy Dreamer, in this match, and literally all they did to contribute to the match was a DDT on a trash can lid.
At least they contributed. Your guys on the outside interference didn't do a damn thing except take Alfonso out.
They got the crowd hyped up and got Alfonso to leave so that they could restart the match, and then the action went.
Mine actually worked in the match. It wasn't a distraction. And I'm sorry, if we want to go ahead and really put it to brass tacks, your brutal match was done again in the same year, like I said. There has never been, from that point on, another barbed wire match done in ECW.
Because it was clunky and it sucked.
You cannot do it again, regardless of who you put into it, because it's just that messed up.
No, it's not because it's that messed up. It's because it's that clunky and messy. The barbed wire was getting caught on every cloth that it made it hard to actually do the spots they had planned to do.
It's supposed to get caught. That's the thing. It's something you can't control.
But you're supposed to also have a good match, and the ability to sell the stuff in the wrestling portion of the match is what enhances the brutality. Axel and Ian were good salesmen, and so they were able to enhance the brutality.
On the debate round, we have 1 minute closings for the both of you. Nico, you are up first.
As I was saying, my match's brutality was enhanced by Axel and Ian's abilities as wrestlers. Even though the Taipei death match was a bit of a sprint, they still used actually good wrestling to sell the brutality of the glass, cutting them everywhere, the thumbtacks, nailing them everywhere. They cut themselves at literally every place you could think of. They did this all to sell the effects of the glass, to sell the effects of the thumbtacks. I actually felt like I was watching a genuine apocalyptic fight between two guys who truly hated each other when I watched the Taipei death match. The barbed wire match felt like a clunky mess of a wrestling match between two old guys who were well past their prime. And that's why they never did the barbed wire match again, because there's just too much potential for error that will come at the expense of the match itself, and it will undercut the brutality you're trying to portray because the match itself sucks. Like, it becomes a laughing stock. It becomes a parody of itself because of the clunkiness of the gimmick. Whereas with the Taipei death match, although there's a lot of blood, it can still be delivered cleanly.
All right, Ryan, your 1 minute is on the clock when you start.
There's a reason Sabu and Terry Funk are the legends that they are. All right, they are going to go ahead and they're going to put their bodies on the line to put the match through its ringer, tell the story that needs to be told, which told the story of Sabu winning the championship from Terry and being able to go ahead and spill his blood to do so, as he has done in many matches. But the barbed wire that you called clunky, I call unpredictable. And that's exactly what you want in something in ECW. You don't want something that's too choreographed. You want something that you don't know how it's going to turn out, what's going to happen, how the cuts are going to go, how the blood's going to flow, how they're going to get through it, who's going to come in and fuck something up. That is the epitome of ECW. And if you're talking a brutal match, you go for a match that you don't know how bad it's going to be. Oh, glass on the fist, you get what's going to happen there. Barbed wire, you don't know how the barbed wire is going to be utilized. You don't know what else is going to be utilized. Tables, chairs, any of it. It is an unpredictable cascade of viscera that you get.
And that is time. All right, once again, another fiery, passionate debate between these two as the judges make their decision. I think I can safely say both of you guys did a great job on selling me that I never want to take part in either of those things. Nothing about this sounds appealing. Whatever is entering my body, none of it, I'm good. But with that, we'll go ahead and give the minute for our judges to make their decisions. JB3 is good. Kevin is good. And Ryan is good. So we're going to go ahead and start with Mr. JB3. Who are you giving the point to this round?
Very, very good to hear about this question. Maybe, I don't know, I might have to go take a cold shower after hearing about all that. But, no, I the person I gave my point to just gave more details and more descriptions of why. It was very close again. I just think the guy that I picked it just gave a little bit more facts, and that would be Nico NSR.
All right, so the first vote goes to Nico. We will now move on to Kevin. Where is your vote headed?
Yeah, this was a super close one. I vividly remember both of these matches, and they were both rough. But as far as the points made in the match or in this debate, yes, they were both gimmicks. Which Nico made that retort, which was a good point. The one thing that Nico made, the one point, is about the breakneck speed. Being able to put on a match like that in a 7 minute 10 second speed is really unbelievable. The one thing you didn't really come back against, Ryan, is that tack spot at the end. You made a lot of good points against the glass, but you didn't really have anything against the tacks. It was close, but I gave my point to Nico.
All right, so before we get to the celebration, I want to give Ryan his chance to speak here. Who would your vote have gone to?
Yeah, this was another close battle. I mean, I would not have given my thumbs up if I was assured, and my point would have gone to Nico too, because, well, Ryan definitely talked about the moments in that barbed wire match, why it was brutal and why you have not seen anything like that again. But when he said that Nico's match had not only happened, but it's happened more than once, and then Nico countered Nico did a good counter saying the reason why the barbed wire match in ECW wasn't done again because it was clunky. And he didn't have much time to be able to repost that into probably trying to bring up examples about the other matches, about the other, like the same similar hardcore match that Nico had chosen for his own. If I'm guessing if there was more time, Ryan definitely would have gotten my point here.
All right, but with that, ladies and gentlemen, you're still undefeated, reigning Chokeslam champion, hugging that belt like he won't lose it, the Cosmic Night Fury, Nico Suave Regoli.
Oh, I'm hugging it because I thought there was a genuine chance that I would lose it tonight, and I'm so happy that it went my way. Whew, boy, Brian, you gave me a fight. I can definitely say that. You gave me one of the toughest fights I've had so far in this particular league, in this particular brand, in this division. I did my research. I did my homework, and it worked for me. I came out on top, and I'm happy. I live to fight another day as the Chokeslam champion.
All right, I'll come back to you in just a second, Nico, but I want to speak to the big O, Ryan O'Regan here. First off, I don't think anyone is not going to contend that you gave not only a major event-worthy level fight here, but a championship-level fight as well. Obviously, a defeat's never fun, but how are you feeling, man?
Still sweaty, but I don't enjoy it as much now. You know what? Props to Nico. He likes to go ahead and throw out a lot of points and statistics, which of course aided him, and I can't fault that. The man does his research. I do feel like maybe some of the facts I pointed out may have been glossed over, but chalk that up to sour grapes if you want. I mean, I guess in a sense it's humbling, and I've always been the kind to take being humble to heart. Yes, I did come into this undefeated. Yes, I do have a defeat now, and maybe that will make me analyze how I approach things in the future. I guess in the grand scheme of things, these were not exactly easy topics to debate either. So at least I can say that I would have really liked to have gone to the 5th round. I would have really liked to get into the Lucha Underground stuff because I love that series, all 4 seasons of it. Perhaps for another day. And again, congratulations, Nico. But don't think this is the last time I'm seeing you. Because if I can get this far now, imagine what I can do if I'm pissed.
I don't expect this to be the last time I see you across the ring for me.
And with that, Ryan cuts a promo that answers every question I could have asked. Ryan, you did a great job today, man. Again, I don't think anyone is counting you out, and 3-1 is still a strong record. I don't think it'll be long before you're back here again. But with that, we will move over to the champ, Mr. Nico Suave Regoli. First off, at 4-0, still undefeated, still the reigning champ. How does it feel now more than ever to hold that belt?
Oh, dude, Aaron, you have known me for a couple of years. Like,
yeah, a little bit.
I had done a couple movie battleground matches a few years back, and I don't think I prepared as hard for those as I did for this, and it showed because I lost those movie battleground matches, but I'm undefeated here in the Chokeslam. It's a topic that I know very much, very much, and I'm willing to put in the work to do what's necessary to keep this title. And so, thankfully, I was not confident about those last 2 questions that we had to do stuff for but I'm really thankful I got that ECW question because I'm about to show my cards here. ECW is just something I don't have a lot of knowledge in, but you give me a match, you give me a pay-per-view, and I'll watch it and I'll do the homework. And that's exactly what I did, and it worked in my favor. And I'm just happy. I'm just happy to still have this. And I look forward to whoever ends up being my next challenger for said title. You probably have a follow-up question for that. And Super Ath, if you're watching, let's wait until 3 months from now to think about what we're going to do with TMG Entertainment for Trivia for Thon 3. But this is where I have to exit the call. I have another match that I have to help host. So thank you guys for having me on. I'm still happy to be your champion. But until then, I bid you adieu. Goodbye, moi, and good night. Bang.
Well, definitely in terms of a champion sense, always working. Before we officially close out the show, I'm going to do a quick run through with everybody here so you guys can plug yourselves. I'll go and start with Mr. Ryan Payne in the bottom corner. Where can people find you?
Okay, all right. People can find me here on TMG. You can see me judge any more matches happening here in any of the divisions, or you'll see me play in the divisions as well. You can check me out on Suplex City Chats. Be talking wrestling with the host Matt, and also check out my letterbox of Valentine 316. It's not a lot. I just occasionally drop in to put together a list of franchises I've rewatched or the occasional movie that caught my attention. I just did a whole ranked list of Bond movies. I just now did a ranked list of Mission Impossible. I think I'm going to be moving on. I'm stepping out of spy movies. I might move on to something more fantasy or hell, more comic book like. Who knows?
All right, we'll go ahead and over next to him, Ryan Big O'Regan. Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Realer Deal, as well as Realer Deal Entertainment on Facebook, where I go ahead and talk about all things movie-oriented. Plus, there is the podcast JT and Big O. That's where I do pretty much everything wrestling and entertainment-oriented with my man JT McGuire. We post the podcast audio every Monday and subsequent video clips throughout the week. So go ahead, like, subscribe, comment, share, make a poster on you and put it on the wall. Do all sorts of things, but just keep in touch.
On my right-hand side, JB3.
Yo, find me at Nerd Entertainment Network. Sometimes I have matches, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do promos. But you can normally find me every Thursday night also with Ryan Payne over there on Suplex City Chats. We like to talk about the current week of wrestling, whenever that week shall be, whenever. Usually we talk more about the more interesting things and we kind of leave the other things in the dust. So yeah, Thursday nights normally it's supposed to be at 8 p.m. Eastern. Sometimes it's at like 10, or it's supposed to be at 9. It's sometime at 9.
Thursday nights, that is the point. And to my left-hand side, Kevin Poss.
Yeah, you can find me on TMG. Same as Ryan. I'm usually judging or competing. And also I am on After Dark with Matty G on Saturday nights, 10 o'clock Eastern. Tonight, tune in. We have Schmodown. Well, I guess this will air later, so go catch it on YouTube. It'll be new Schmodown competitor Adam Collins will be our guest. So check that out.
All right, and you guys can find me on Instagram at Aaron T. Knoll, and hopefully here doing more things as I get a little bit more involved with this channel. Once again, guys, thank you for checking this out and watching this match. This has been the Chokeslam Championship, and this has been another match in our Scratch and Claw event. Be sure to check out all the matches that have already aired and the few matches we still have left coming to you. And on behalf of everyone with TMG, my judges, and my competitors, thank you for watching, and have a great night.